Right, hello. Welcome to week 3 of the Progcast. I'm Aled. It was just kind of jazzy sounds. Brilliant.
I told you I would work on a sound panel for you.
Right, good. So I get the joke tagline every week, do I?
Unless
right?
you bring some of your own, yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, this is what I get for leaving it to you. And Ben.
Yeah, I'm Ben. I'm going to stick with my safe one.
Nice, classic. Right, so today we're just going to discuss the album Artificial by Australian proggers Unitopia. So, as Oscar Pistorius hopes to find out, can Artificial compete with the best? Is it like Carol Vorderman's French boob job? Bursting with artificial intelligence? Or are there more artificial flaws than the Russian Premier League? Let's find out.
Very good.
Thank you.
I was thinking of a tit joke, and you managed to shoehorn it in there.
Yeah.
Again, this was an album that you listened to quite a bit before me, and you suggested to me sort of last summer, I think it was. And I absolutely love it, and I think it's a great one to come on to because it is different from the other ones we've talked about. And it's modern, is it? When did this one come out?
Yeah, 2010.
Yeah, so we've managed to get ourselves out of the 70s at last. Go on to something more contemporary.
Yeah.
I'd never heard of these guys before. Do you know much about them? Where are they from? And
from Australia. I don't know much more than that, if I'm being honest. You'd have thought I'd do some research on this.
Well, we've not only gone out of the 70s, we've gone out of England.
Well, I think this is their third album. And yeah, I struggle to think of any other Australian prog bands.
I mean, this was an album that I hadn't realised that I'd listened all the way through the first time you showed it to me, and that kind of shows how good it is. It's a very fluid album that flows, and it's really, really listenable.
Well, all the songs run into each other, don't they?
Yeah, I hadn't realised that one had finished the next one, and there are a few great prog albums that are like that.
Was that because you were just zoning out and...
Well, you know, I was doing other stuff.
Every song sounded the same.
No, I was doing other stuff, but it was so pleasant. You know, it wasn't abrupt at all.
Right.
You know, it is a great album, and I think there are a few things that I would pick out from this.
Okay.
First thing that I want to talk about is the subject matter.
Right.
Especially in the first song, Artificial. Now, it can... Artificial World, yeah. It can seem like a bit of a sort of Luddite or old man topic to criticise modern society, but, you know, the first proper song after the intro kind of deals with quite challenging subject matter, which I think is pretty brave. And it sort of sums up how we've built a lot of walls, doesn't it, in modern lifestyle. You've got lyrics about how kids don't play with each other anymore, which is sort of kind of thing your granddad might say. But it is kind of true, and I think what I think it's good to stick your neck out with music, especially prog, you know. A lot of the time, if you look back at, say, the last album we listened to, prog can be very, very abstract, and, you know, the lyrics aren't really about anything other than crazy shit, you know, wizards wearing capes or
crazy
whatever.
What, sorry? I'll have to
Can we get a little censorship?
Find some jazzy sounds to cover that up. It was just kind of jazzy sounds.
Yeah,
that's going to get spammed, isn't it?
It's going to get what?
Eating half a loaf of bread and then eating half a tin of spam. For the benefit of the listener, that was totally unplanned.
You walked straight into that. I'm sorry.
Right, there's the obligatory spam reference for today.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, you were saying.
I'm completely derailed now. But I think it's good to not just have really abstract stuff, and this album does have some of that, but also to use prog to actually say something and to be sort of poignant.
I think it's definitely good to have a message to say. It gives it more of a focus, and I think that is important for this album, because this album, well, as kind of the antithesis of last week's one, it's not just there to try and do something different. I think there is an underlying point that they're trying to get across, and I think they describe their music as an experience rather than just here's some tunes.
Yeah.
So there's obviously an underlying... The music is the way to get... for them to express themselves, their underlying ideas.
That's it, and that was one of the things that we loved about Selling Him by the Pound. It was that the music was taking you somewhere.
Yeah.
There were characters in there, or there was a story, and that's progressive in the sense of moving somewhere, you know, and going forward, and that's what I liked about this album. No, I was just going to say, in terms of the actual sound of it, it's quite an eclectic mix, isn't it? And I think they sort of pride themselves on being like that. There's metally bits in there, really sort of crisp metally bits. There's some great lead guitar. There's world music, definitely some strange world music.
What's wrong with it of that?
I don't know how to describe some of the other parts, kind of trundling brass sections and things. And
trundling?
Yeah, you know. Do you know what I mean?
I'm going to guess that was Nothing Lasts Forever.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, that song for me is a great example of the directions this album goes into, because that's really not the sort of song you would imagine on a kind of rockier type prog band, but it works great.
I don't know, that song for me is, in one sense, it's one of my favourites on the album. In another sense, I kind of cringe when I listen to it, because it is a massive Beatles rip-off, isn't it? I mean,
yeah, it's very, very rich.
But knowingly so. I mean, the lyrics are like maybe the boys from Liverpool, etc., etc. You know, it knows what it's doing. And that kind of trundling brass section is just almost ripped straight off the ending sequence from Penny Lane.
Yeah, and there's some Beatles references in there as well, aren't there? Yeah.
But I mean, I think that really works. It's trying to get that nostalgic feeling, and what's more nostalgic than just ripping off something from the 60s, right?
I mean, that's fine, but I think, it's great to have sort of modern music that has influences from old music, but I think it is good to acknowledge where it's coming from and not just try and rip it off. And this album has plenty of modern stuff in there as well, so I don't really see it as a problem. And I thought that was a great example of a song on there. Now, I mean, in terms of musical peaks, you'd have to put Tesla forward, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
I mean, you've said that to me as well. It's a 13-minute absolute epic, and it's got everything in there. It's got a sort of fiddle and flamenco section in there when I was listening to it back. And if you broke it down into all its components, there's so much, but it sort of peaks and it gets really heavy in one part. And then they've got this kind of really, really catchy chanting
That's what
end,
I love.
haven't you?
If you ever watched them, when I've watched YouTube videos of them live, and that's a moment for all the crowd to get their lighters in the air and everyone's clapping along and that.
Well, this is it.
proper like anthemic. It's not really a chorus, but you know what I mean, an anthemic chorusy.
I remember a conversation that I had with you when we were watching I think it was Rule Prog Britannia, and you had that quote from Genesis saying, "I don't want people standing up at my concerts. They should be sat down, appreciating the music." And I think sod that. I think when you go to see a live band, whether it's prog or anything else, you do want something to get engaged with, something to chant along, spill your beer to, whatever.
The good thing was though that was around for a little while, and then just as I was beginning to tire of it, I was getting a bit bored. It was getting a bit samey. Then it cut off again, and it just went in a totally different direction.
And it goes back into the sort of slower stuff that you've got at the start. Yeah.
I mean, what I said about Gentle Giant last week. I think that really is how to do it, and I absolutely love that. It just it looms out, almost like the ship appearing out of the mist, and suddenly it's there and it's great, and then it just disappears again when just in the right time. It doesn't overuse it. Yeah. And I feel that some lesser bands would have, not necessarily prog bands, but like pop bands would have gone, right, we've got this, we can rinse that out, make a 3-minute track, bish bash bosh, done. Yeah. But they wanted more than that. That wasn't enough, and I really, really like that.
Yeah, great. That's a great point. And you sort of mentioned a bit about the album we talked about last week, the Gentle Giant album, Acquiring the Taste. This is the opposite of that. And I was looking up a bit about this album on Prog Archives, and this is described as crossover prog, isn't it?
Well, yeah.
And I was like, I hadn't really heard of that term before, and I had a look on a few definitions online. Prog Archives describes that as progressive music that, though 100% progressive, has connections with popular music. So that's whether it's a lack of emphasis on extended bits or influences from mainstream music in addition to classical, jazz and folk. That's the opposite of trying to be, striving to be non-commercial, as Gentle Giant put in their album sleeve last week. Why not put bits in there that people like and can recognise, but do it in a clever way and kind of, weave a story from it?
To my mind, that's like kind of ultra pop. That's what pop should be aiming for.
Yeah, it's intelligent pop, isn't it? And that's the reason why I've become disillusioned with pop music these days, because it's all about, clapping booty and all that crap. I sound so old. You ladies clapping booty.
Put the soapbox away.
clapping booty.
Air quotes were done. Oh, God. It's like the Antiques Roadshow theme tune, just on acid, isn't it?
Yeah, fair enough. You know what I mean? It's all about sex and just boring crap. Why not have
partying in the club?
Exactly. Oh dear. I really have made myself sound bloody old now.
It's a proper rant, proper old school rant.
There are other bands in that genre that you really like, that bands like Supertramp.
Well, I was going to mention Roger Hodgson, which is as far as I know, the driving force behind Supertramp. And this music really reminds me of quite a lot of his solo stuff. I don't know what you'd call it, like a pop sensibility. But just done in a interesting, progressive way. I almost feel like I should apologise for that kind of music. I feel that it should be more and more challenging, and really the more zany stuff.
Yeah.
The Frank Zappa end of the market, and that's the kind of stuff that's cool, and that's the idea of prog, that it should be really challenging. But there's room for both of those things in anybody's record collection. Definitely.
I completely agree, and I think it's good to have accessible prog, and that's probably the reason why I like this album so quickly. If you've got a few hooks that stick in your head, You'll go back and listen to those, but you'll also, there's a lot more in there, and you're exposed to the more complex stuff, but you got something to latch onto while you're listening to it.
Yeah.
When we were talking last week about acquiring the taste, that they had a couple of kind of more sort of catchy songs on there, you felt as though they'd sort of overdone it with the catchy bits. Do you feel this album has any parts that are too rich or have been overdone, or do you think it's got the balance right?
I think the last one, The Great Reward, when that brings back quite a lot of Nothing Lasts Forever, like some of the motifs and even some of the melody patterns, I think that is a bit much. I'm a bit...
Yeah.
I think that's a bit overwrought, and I'm usually a bit bored of it by then.
Right, I think we're starting to almost compete for analogies now, because you started off the first week with that ridiculous cricket one.
I'll be honest, this is where I was hoping the Progcast would go.
It's just going to turn into a show of highly intellectual puns and me and you patting each other on the back.
More unwieldy analogies.
Exactly.
Fairly tenuous, alright.
I would say this... Mine always food. I don't know why. I've got
a food one.
Food and booze. I'd say this album's like a pint of Guinness.
Right.
It takes a bit of getting used to, but it does go down smoothly and makes you feel quite good.
Right, this is the second ale-based...
Luckily, though, unlike Guinness, it doesn't make you jump around holding hands and screeching lyrics to Living on a Prayer.
There's a mashup waiting to happen. To complement your ale analogy, I've gone for, I think this is... It's like a chicken tikka masala, I think. It's in that it's not the most spicy or like the most challenging curry. And as I say, you know, I feel like I should almost apologise. I always feel a bit embarrassed when I'm ordering that. I feel like I should go for a vindaloo or like a prawn phal or something really, really hardcore. Are you listening, Andy?
Yeah, I was going to say, bad experiences on that one on a night out.
The thing is, though, I reckon about 90% of people ordering those are just like cocky knobheads trying to show off, aren't they? I mean, I once witnessed a curry house waiter tell an obnoxious bloke who had ordered the hottest thing on the menu that spice was just one of many flavours, and his order was rather simplistic and a bit offensive. And I think if your idea of prog should just be the most challenging music there is,
yes,
I think you're missing the point, really, and that's going down a path that I'm very sceptical about. Whereas I think this just does what it does really well. So it's a like a good quality tikka masala, like a Patax or something like that, you know?
Oh, very good shout.
You know,
we're going to get sponsorship from them too.
The reason Britain loves curry. It's not like your Tesco's Basics. It's proper good for what it does.
Yeah.
But it's not trying to be the most extreme. It's not trying to be the most out there. Not trying to be the most challenging. But at the end of the day, it's a damn good meal.
And that is a great analogy.
There you go.
Would you say that it's...
Eating half a loaf of bread and then eating half a tin of Spam.
Okay, that's the two, isn't it?
Right, you're overusing that one now.
I think we should move swiftly on. Now, if you've not been listening, we've been doing a little bit of a quiz at the end of the episodes. Actually, we've got a 1-1 score at the moment, haven't we?
Right.
Alright, here you go.
That's off this album.
Is it?
Yeah. Isn't it?
Is it? I'm not telling you.
Yeah, that's the rule of threes or something off this album.
Yeah, it is the rule of threes.
Yeah,
oh well.
Good, I've done my homework. Alright, this has been Progcast, episode 3. I've been Aled, and...
I've been Ben.
See you next week.
See you next week. Yeah, I'm sorry about all that swearing.